They're looking over your shoulder, like seeing more important. So,
I've been to networking events like that where somebody's looking over my shoulder. Welcome to episode 21 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing, the F is for, well, you decide. As you may be wondering if the world needs another effing marketing podcast. I'm your host, Ian Truscott, Chief Bottle Washer at Apropingo, a London-based content marketing agency and founding editor of Rockstar CMO. If you're not familiar with our publication, we publish a monthly dose of marketing street knowledge, sharing the voice of our community of CMOs and marketing writers. You can find us at rockstarcmo.com or at rockstarcmo on Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm recording this on Friday the 31st of July. Thank you for joining us. I hope you've had a good week, that you're staying safe, well, and as sane as you feel you need to be. As it's our 21st episode, you think we're coming of age? If you're a regular listener, please let us know what you think of the podcast so far. If you're new, welcome. Thank you. We have the usual set list this week. I'll chat about something from the virtual pages of Rockstar CMO from our wonderful contributing community that you might want to take a look at. I'll be giving one of our regular contributors, Lauren Bowden, her podcasting debut, and we'll be chatting about marketers and their education, freelancing, and her career from PR to content marketing. I'm looking forward to welcoming her to the show. I then close out my Friday evening with a trip to the virtual Rockstar CMO bar with the Chief Troublemaker at the Content Advisory, Robert Rose. Let's get started, shall we? This week, as I flick through the pages of Rockstar CMO, I'd very much like you to join me in the green room. This is a regular feature where we pose a question from the theme of the issue to our community of Rockstar CMOs. We've covered a lot of interesting topics over the 2 years in the green room. As I mentioned last week, the theme for the last issue was about the importance of having a marketing education. And in the green room this month, we captured the thoughts of 6 CMOs and senior marketers, including what they look for when they're hiring. The article is pretty insightful and quite encouraging, as there seems to be an agreement that enthusiasm for the craft, aptitude and experience are just as important as an education to them. I'll include a link to this article in the show notes. Let us know what you think. Aside from appearing in your favourite podcast player, I will post the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. Right, on to the interview. This week, I chat to one of our fabulous contributors and a member of the Rockstar CMO house band, Lauren Bowden. Lauren is an independent freelancer and chief content creator fintech at the Comms Crowd, a specialist PR, AR, social media and content marketing agency focused on B2B tech and fintech companies. She specializes in translating complex ideas into compelling content for multiple purposes and audiences. I really enjoy Lauren's writing for us. She's a regular here at Rockstar CMO, and I wanted to feature her here, especially after her last article that shared her experience of having a PR degree and what it was like in her early career. And then following on from that, both agency and client side, and how going freelance was working out for her. Lauren's not someone used to being in front of the microphone, and this was her podcasting debut. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome, Lauren, to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
Hi, Ian. Yeah, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me on.
You're very welcome. And how's sort of semi-lockdown treating you where you are?
It's not too bad at all, especially on a sunny day like today. It's the hottest day of the year, I think, today.
Yeah.
It's fine when you're not locked in your office, I guess. But
yeah, with the windows closed because you're recording a podcast. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, and obviously from your accent, you're joining us from the UK, as I am, and as you say, the weather is just beautiful today. But I think this is the summer, isn't it? This is going to be our summer just today.
Yeah. Just today, yeah.
All right. So, Lauren, you're a regular contributor to Rockstar CMO, but for people that don't follow the publication, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, yeah. So I have been in the PR marketing industry for about 16 years now, I think.
Hmm.
Started at a PR agency, Metia. I think you've had somebody from Metia in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're familiar with those guys. So
I've
yeah,
got some friends over there actually.
oh
I think
yeah,
it's a lovely agency. I think I've worked with them before when I was the CMO and hired them to do some work for me. I think Meta are a great little agency.
yeah. I mean, when I started, they were still called Right Image,
Hmm.
which I thought was a great name. But yeah, it made sense for where they were heading, like to change it. But yeah, Right
Yeah.
Image, and then we were part of the 660 Degrees part, which was kind of the sort of sub agency that was set up to sort of handle any kind of conflicts. So like
Hmm.
Metia had or Right Image had the Microsoft account. We'd have some
Yeah.
Microsystems account and things like that. We'd make sure that they were completely separate. So that's when I
Hmm.
met Sam from. Sam Howard was my account director, so she hired me. She was my first sort of boss in there.
Mm.
So that's, and I know she's a mutual friend as well. And yeah,
Yes.
known her all that time. And
Yeah.
yeah, met some people that I'm still in touch with today. Like you say, lovely agency, lovely culture.
Hmm.
Yeah, so and that was obviously my very first taste of any kind of financial technology, which I
Yeah.
never thought I would be in. How I got into that, basically, I was doing Bournemouth uni degree in PR, which I think we're going to talk
Hmm.
about later. But
Hmm.
we had to do a third year placement as part of the degree, and I literally just went. They had a placement office, and I just literally went to every interview I could, and I managed
Hmm.
to. I just happened to come across Metia and hit it off with Sam, and then financial
Yeah.
technology was part of my world from then on, basically. So
Right. Which is
um,
what you specialize in now.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so I was there for a few years, and then I went to Weber Shandwick for a
Hmm.
little while, and that was pure tech, which I did
Hmm.
enjoy, but I did miss the fintech, which was weird because I never thought that would be. I'm not
Yeah.
mathsy, I'm not into finance at all, like normally, but I just really enjoyed the challenge of sort of trying to work out what the problems were amongst
Hmm.
all this jargon, kind of
Yeah.
working out the actual human side of it, and that was always really interesting to me. And then I was working during the financial crisis when all that happened, so I was very close to all of that, and that was just
Hmm.
horrible but very interesting. And sort of went back into financial technology after Weber Shandwick,
Hmm.
and worked at a company called FRS Global. So the whole
Hmm.
time during uni and everything and talking to people, there was always the talk of in-house versus agency, and that was a big
Yeah.
thing on my mind. And it was kind of like, right, maybe now it's time to go in-house,
Yeah.
weighing up all the pros and cons. So I went into FRS Global, which was a small VC-funded company that was acquired by Walters Kluwer about 2 years after I joined. So I was there for
Right.
about 10 years altogether. So, and then now I'm freelance. So that's kind of my work career in a nutshell.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. You start, but it's interesting though because you started as what we'd call in agency land a suit, right? You're an account exec at the beginning, but now you're a content marketer, right?
Yeah, that sort of evolved during my time at Walters Kluwer. So
Hmm.
I was working as the PR manager and comms manager as we grew, as we got acquired, and as the remit grew, my responsibilities got
Hmm.
wider and wider. We had a
Hmm.
couple of different chief marketing officers come in, as these things
Yeah,
happen. People get
as
leave,
happens. Yeah, yeah.
and so it kind of the idea of specialist marketing people was brought in.
Hmm.
When the acquisition happened, and it was product marketing then, and I was still very much on the comms side. But
Hmm.
the more I saw of what that meant, because I think before that it was very generalist marketing. They would do all of the emails, all of the events, all the everything, and it
Yeah,
didn't appeal to me as much. But the content marketing side and their link and product marketing side with their links to the product management teams and like really working like the inner workings of the company, which
yeah.
Sam's always said that I'm really deep dive, and I do really like digging in and finding out, like, talking to people and getting the full story about things, and that it just really appealed to me. That side of it really appealed to me. So when we had a couple of product marketers leave, I kind of stepped up and tried to. We needed to sort of get these campaigns going, and I sort of stepped up and said I'd like to do that, and then just sort of went from there, and then became a full-time product marketing person. So, and I've been doing that now for about 6 years, I'd say, and I really enjoy that side of it. It's really interesting to me. So, and seeing how it's evolving in the market, all these other new terms like context marketing and things like that. It's all really interesting to me. But still doing a bit of PR and the comms crowd. But
content marketing is that's
right.
And you'd mentioned just a moment ago that you struck out on your own, went freelance, and we're seeing the rise of the gig economy right now, and lots of people are making that decision. What advice would you give to people that are now going freelance?
I think the biggest thing for me was that kind of adjustment that it is up to you. It is totally up to you what you do and what you make of it, because when you're working for a company, you can kind of hide a little bit behind the brand, behind the team. You can, do good work and everything, and just sort of do it in the background. But when you're out on your own, you've got to have that kind of courage to put yourself forward and really get your name out there and be, self-sufficient and just do everything. And it's daunting, but it's exciting. And for me, I was really lucky with the comms crowd, because I was able to still have still have that kind of structure of a team and accounts, account management and things. But it was finding my own work now as well. So it's helped me make that transition. So I think that kind of relying on your network and asking people, and that's that kind of asking for help thing that people are so reluctant to do sometimes, but that's so important when you're going freelance, to say, like, can you any tips, anyone, and just putting going out to your LinkedIn and saying, does anyone have anything? Some stuff has come up for me that I didn't really expect at all. The just reaching out on Facebook, friends that have had starting their own businesses, and then I just said, oh, good luck, I'm doing this, and then work just happens, and it's like just keeping your eyes open all the time, and just talking to people as well, which we know is really important in our industry. So
maintaining the relationships.
And going to any event you can and things like that. So I'm not a natural networker or anything like that at all. But whenever I've been lucky enough to go to events, I've done it, and I've made myself go out and talk to people, and so just getting over that sort of hurdle of being part of something else and just being on your own, but also then knowing when to lean on the people that are around you, because people generally want you to do well, and that people like giving advice. So it's
that's a good point. That's a very good point. And you mentioned the comms crowd a couple of times. Tell us a little bit about the comms crowd. What do they do?
So comms crowd, so Sam Howard's the founder. So she was my first director at Metia. She basically started as a sort of a collective of freelancers, mainly in the PR space, but we also have people. We have people that create podcasts. We have different writers. We have, but it's basically it started from the PR side, but it's kind of expanded out from there. Pre-COVID, it was all people working from home, and it's like what everyone's doing now. But it was kind of, rather than spend the money on an expensive office in the middle of London, swanky reception area or whatever, it's really just getting very experienced people who are available, and they're few, good value, getting good results, basically. So we've got the fintech side and the tech side. So I work in the fintech space, but So,
nice.
It's a brilliant. Sorry.
And in between all of that, you're a regular writer for us from Rockstar CMO, as I mentioned at the beginning, and then you contribute to the latest issue. So I want to come around to this, because you've also mentioned that you've got a degree in PR, and the latest issue was all about whether marketers need a marketing education. What was your experience of that? So you went and got a marketing education, you have a degree in PR, and how was that? Has that helped your career, do you think?
Yeah, so in my article, I kind of I didn't have a very clear stance of yes, you do need a degree, or no, you don't need a
Hmm.
degree. It's kind of it's whatever is right for you, and for me, it was the right thing to do. And I found that while the returns weren't immediate,
Hmm.
they came later down the line, and it was I refer to it in my article. I still get my old textbooks out sometimes and have a look, and
Yeah.
but when you're immediately working in like PR, you're obviously doing a lot of the admin, and you're doing a lot of like clippings and pitching to
Yeah.
journalists and stuff, and obviously you don't have the degree isn't about that. The degree that I did was we learned about how to read an annual report, the profit and loss
Hmm.
stuff, the legal stuff, copyright, all that stuff. We did a bit of design work, and it's all
Hmm.
stuff that really informed my career later on, and like organizational behavior theories and things like that. And it's like, oh, I remember that from school,
Yeah.
from uni. It's like all groupthink and the psychological side of it. And
Yeah.
yeah, because you don't benefit straight away from that kind of education, it's like it does feel a bit at the time like, why am I doing this? It's so expensive.
Yeah.
It's so long and expensive. And it's like, well, why am I bothering? But it did pay off for me, definitely. And
Yeah.
also the thing about uni, and I hear a lot of people say this, just going to uni in itself is it's a whole other part of like life education. It's the first time I
Yeah.
heard from a lot of people, and it's
Yeah.
just like getting that confidence, and I think that kind of prepares you for work in a way that it wouldn't if you came straight from school or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell because I've only ever done like the uni side
Yeah,
of
no,
it.
you're making good points. But I also think that what's interesting is in quite a few of the interviews that we do and the conversations I've had is this idea that psychology plays a major part of marketing. Now, if you're going through an education, then you get a much broader view, don't you? If you're a self-taught marketer, you may not think to study psychology or buy a book about psychology.
Right. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just, I went to, like I was saying, go to as many events as you can. I
Yeah.
went to one led by Ogilvy, and they did
Hmm.
one called Nudge Stock. And it was
Hmm.
completely like foreign to me, but it was so interesting. And it was about the idea of, it was very much based in the psychology side of it, and
Mm.
persuading people to change their opinions on things. And that's totally what marketing is. And it's like, it actually made
Yeah.
me want to do, maybe I looked into doing like a master's degree in a topic related to that, like cognitive behavioral
Mm.
stuff. And it was just like, I couldn't afford it now, but it was so
Yeah. Yeah.
expensive. It was like, if I was to do
Yeah.
it again, it wouldn't, like my degree hasn't put me off doing further education on this kind of topics,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, no, that's and it's staying curious, isn't it, as a marketer?
absolutely, that's a
Yeah,
huge part of
yeah,
it. That's why, going
yeah,
to events, reading whatever you can, never thinking that
yeah.
you know everything about a topic, because it's changing
That's
so
true.
much. It's everything's changing so
Yeah,
much. It's just you've got to keep going, keep reading, keep staying curious, like you say. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. And when you were building your team before you were freelance, and you were hiring folks, was marketing education part of the criteria that you had for your team? What did you look for in candidates?
Well, no, I mean, I didn't. We had like a minimum, have a degree, not necessarily in
Hmm.
marketing or anything. That was kind
Hmm.
of, an HR sort of requirement, but
Hmm.
we'd still see people that didn't. I had a lot of interviews in my last year. I was interviewing quite a lot of people, not necessarily
Hmm.
people reporting to me, but just being in the room
Yeah,
when we were interviewing. And it
yeah.
really became clear that, that's not, and people that I've worked with in the past who haven't got degrees or marketing
Hmm.
degrees or degrees at all have been some of the best. It's like, you just know, there's a
Yeah,
feeling when you meet somebody.
yeah,
It's like, they're going to be enthusiastic, they're going to be keen, they want to
yeah,
learn, they've got that thirst for knowledge, like just saying, they're curious about
yeah.
things, and it's really not that important really at that stage. I think, it's kind of the HR requirements that's the barrier there, because if the
Mm.
company
Hmm.
overall want a degree, then you're only going to get a certain group of people. But yeah, like sometimes when that isn't the biggest, when that isn't a requirement on the job spec, then it comes down to really what they're like. But yeah, I mean, like I say, that some of the best people I've worked with haven't had a degree at all. So it's just, I said in my article, it'd be a really boring workplace if everyone had the same sort of degree, and you'd get no diversity in opinion, and you'd have all the same sort of patting each other on the back for being so clever kind of thing. That's not a great environment for marketing. You need a broader spectrum, and I think if you only look for one type of thing, then you're not going to have creative campaigns. You're not going to have campaigns that work.
I think absolutely. I think that's so right. And there's a lot to diversity in a marketing team, and it isn't just about cultural diversity, but also the different approaches people take, because now marketing is so multidisciplined, right? You need data scientists, you need people that are good with finance, you need people that are, creative, obviously, always, and you need people that understand things, the mechanics of things like for SEO and stuff like that. So it's important, isn't it, to have a broad range of folks in the team?
Yeah, and all learning from each other, because I think as well, if you just stay in one of those areas, then you're going to run into trouble later down the line. So when we were introduced to more specialist marketers in my last job, we had a great guy come in, he was a data scientist guy, and he was, I was just like, show me everything you're doing, because it's so interesting. And if I just stay in my little pigeonhole, then, well, in the future, I don't know what my career will lead to. So I try and dip my hand in a little bit of design still, very little bit of design. I'm not a designer by any means, but I like to create content that, that's the thing with content marketing. It's not just writing either. It's what visually works, like finding the, audibly, like podcasts, everything. It's not just writing anymore. So you've got to keep abreast with all that stuff and know the mechanics of how it works, I think.
Right. And how are you finding it working with your clients? Do you think people understand the value of content marketing?
I think because I feel like it's still quite a new term in a lot of ways. So I think, it's hard sometimes you have to kind of explain the benefit of it. And I think because it's been called other things in the past, it's maybe just, that's just kind of an email. But it's like, well, it's part of a wider campaign. That's one touch point. And, like using those kind of that new terminology, I guess. But it's, I think once it's done, it's like, it's so worth it. It's so obvious the benefits of doing it. So it's just that first.
It's getting that platform built, isn't it? And getting the commitment to build the platform. And then once that's in place, you're off, aren't you? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
And of course, all the different.
Knowing where to look to get the kind of the data to show them how well it works as well. You need all of those pieces in place, don't you?
Yeah. And this is, I mean, I'm a content marketer myself, so I find this topic fascinating, and I think it's always interesting to hear the stories of how, clients are reacting, and everybody's behaving very differently, aren't they, around content marketing, and have a different view about it. Just on the point of, I should have asked you this earlier about the current situation we find ourselves in. What are you seeing from your clients about how they feel about publishing content right now, their messaging and that stuff? What are you seeing a change in this sort of coronavirus world to the briefs that you're getting and what you're writing?
I think early on there was obviously everything kind of needed a layer of this has happened kind of, there'd be reports that were being, I really felt for them, knowing as well, like managing a budget like that and creating big content pieces, only for it to be completely out of date as of March. It was just like none of this matters anymore. All of this expensive, research that you've done and the content is irrelevant now. So you need to completely change it. And lots of my clients were able to do that really well. And it was amazing, really. Like it shows the kind of resilience of our industry to be able to just, keep going and
flip.
and
I think the cool term now is pivot, isn't it? We all pivot
I was
now.
about to say that. Sort of lost my friends. So they've been fantastic, and I think there's a danger a little bit of going back to sort of 2008, where since the financial crisis, where everything started like that. Every email started with since financial crisis. Now it's obviously in this post-COVID world kind of thing, or not post yet, are we? But everything.
I know what you mean.
But you do have to nod to it, because otherwise you just look completely tone deaf. So it's
But my understanding of the zeitgeist right now is that organisations are starting to push forward after a bit of a pause, and realising they still need to communicate to their customers. Is that a consistent experience of what you're seeing?
Oh, absolutely, and it's kind of we're lucky in our in financial at the moment anyway, in the financial services industry. It's kind of in the fintech industry anyway, with kind of business as usual now. I don't want to kind of jinx things, but it feels like people are still having to move forward. And actually, even more so, a lot of my clients are working in making things digital. Like there's a lot of banking that is still very manual based or like analog based, and it's making sure that banks can respond quickly to their customers online, and and a lot of our clients help banks do that. So it's really
it's accelerated digital transformation, basically, hasn't it? I mean, it's a hackneyed expression, digital transformation, but I actually saw some stats the other day that the penetration of e-commerce more has happened in the last few months than happened in the 10 years prior in terms of depth of penetration in the US market with e-commerce. Everybody is now online.
I saw a similar stat from Microsoft.
Interesting report. I'll include that in the show notes if people are interested, but that was really interesting. Now, we could chat about content marketing and what's going on in the world for all afternoon or all morning, as it happens here. But I want to get to my final question, and I ask all of our guests this, and you're going to be familiar with this as a writer for Rockstar CMO. But we have the Rockstar CMO swimming pool where we throw all the snake oil bullshit and dodgy, faddy practices of marketing. The craft we love. I'm not having a go at it. But you're part of our house band, but you've not had a go. So what would you throw into the swimming pool?
Oh, this is a tough one. I've been thinking about this. So it's not, it's not strictly a marketing thing, although it happens in a marketing tactic. So at events, when you've got the people on the stands, it's either the two things that are the most annoying: those that are so thirsty and just come up and just start talking without any kind of and you can see like in 1 second that you're not interesting to me anymore. So I hate that so much. It's just like, why are you talking to me in the first place? But I get it. It's a numbers game for them, but it's just that kind of, they don't even try and change their face to look a slightest bit interested in what you've got to say if you're not an influencer. If you haven't got a buying, like any kind of buying power, it's just like you just know straight away. And then the opposite of that, when you have invested all this money from your marketing budget into an event and your sales team are there and they're not talking to anyone, and they're just talking to each other.
I have been there, and I've been so frustrated because where I've been a CMO, my field team have put in all this effort, and I come along and I see these guys on their phones or talking to each other. I go mad. I really do, because as marketers, you set the stage, right? And that's all you can do. And then it's up to the sales guys to act on that stage. And but I also really like, I mean, this is a great thing to chuck into the swim pool, because I also really like that sort of piranha, like, somebody, you walk past the stand and you see it happening and they come over to you, and then the moment that you're not interesting to them, their eyes go dead and they're off to the next one.
They're looking over your shoulder, like seeing more important.
I've been to networking events like that where somebody's looking over my shoulder and I think, hang on a minute.
It's like, no wonder people don't like networking. It's like, I'm not a natural networker anyway, and then you have these experiences and it's like, I'll just go home then. It's interesting these virtual events. I think I wrote about it for Rockstar CMO. I think the last the kind of chat roulette almost. Obviously not that dodgy chat roulette that was out a few years ago. It was that kind of principle of someone popping up. And I was like, I'm going to try this because I'm at home and you might as well. Let's see what it's like. And luckily, you only had like, not luckily. I mean, I'm sure it's a great idea, but it's like it was basically the only people going forward for it were salespeople. And as soon as you say the word freelancer, they're like, okay. It's like, I still know people. Come on. And then you get 2 minutes with them, and that feels like 10 or like half an hour. But it's been interesting. But,
as they play the numbers game. Well, that was really nice. Thank you very much for joining me on the show. And Lauren, where can people find you when they spin the dial of the interwebs?
So I'm on Twitter. I've got so a new account that I started when I was freelancing, so the numbers are quite small. And then I've got my account from like 2006, which has got a lot more followers. So it's like at Lauren D and at Lauren Bowden. So I got married. And I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also on TikTok.
No.
I'm not going to share that because you don't want to see me trying to find things.
TikTok has become a regular theme on this show about how how people aren't joining it, and
it's been brilliant during COVID. It's just so much fun. Like you could just scroll, and I don't know about for brands. Obviously, for some brands it works, but maybe not B2B fintech. But maybe we'll see. But so my main channel is my LinkedIn, Lauren Bowden. Yeah, it's just Lauren Bowden.
Yeah.
And my Twitter. Sorry,
and you have a website?
Yes, I do. Yeah, LaurenBowdenConsulting.com.
Nice. All right, that's great. And I look forward to speaking to you again. I look forward to your future contributions on Rockstar CMO. It's very nice to talk to you. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you, Lauren. So happy to have Lauren on the show. And I encourage you to take a look at her writing on rockstarcmo.com and check out her colleagues at the Comms Crowd. I've worked with them. Very nice bunch of folks. I will, of course, include all the links to the things we discussed in the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. So it's Friday evening, and as the week draws to a close, and as regular listeners know, I like to kick off my weekend in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar, where I will find my friend and content marketing guru, Robert Rose. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Well, hello, my friend. It's almost like we just spoke. I'm so glad to be here this week. This evening, we have a wonderful, wonderful cocktail. I'm calling it Blackberry Tequila Gimlet, which is almost a health tonic, really. It's got crushed blackberries, lime, and just a splash of fresh squeezed grapefruit juice. So lots of wonderful fruit in there. And then, of course, your choice of a wonderful Reposado tequila.
Oh, nice. That sounds lovely. And many of your drinks, as I've commented before, sound like health tonics. So let's have a look at what I have. You'll be, because a gimlet normally has gin. So you might be surprised to learn that I actually have some gin.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. But I'm glad you have it.
I do have gin. And did you say there was ice in this one?
There is indeed ice in this drink. This is a summer drink for sure.
Okay, so that's the ice. Put some of the gin in. And what were those lovely fruit juices we're putting in there?
Well, there was crushed blackberry, lime, just a splash of fresh squeezed grapefruit juice.
Right, let me see what I've got here. I've got something very similar. If you muddle those together, would that make a tonic, do you think?
Yes, I think the bubbles would be a nice substitute. Yes, I think
nice.
Will work for you.
Oh, nice. Yes, let me taste that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very nice. I could drink these every week.
I think you probably do. I think.
I really could. And that's delicious. I love a gimlet. even a tequila one. Where on earth would we drink these, Robert?
Well, I would have to bring you to my home right here in Southern California. There is a place just near my house. It's called Zuma Beach, which many of your listeners may be familiar with. It's one of the more famous Malibu beaches. Many movies are shot there and all of that. And there is a restaurant there, at a restaurant bar called The Sunset. And it's nothing to look at. I mean, it's like a little dive, really. But they make amazing cocktails, have wonderful food. And the key, and the reason that it's called The Sunset, is because the view of the sunset there is just absolutely spectacular.
Oh, it sounds beautiful. And what better than be invited to where you are? I think that sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Normally I try and insert myself into one of your stories. I've been to California. I've been to the tech part of California, but I've never been to your specific part of the world, but it sounds absolutely beautiful. And I think that, if you're drinking a lockdown libation and you happen to be locked down in a lovely part of the world where you are, that sounds fantastic.
Indeed. And it's one of those places here in Los Angeles, that you almost can't believe is so close in Los Angeles, because it's, it's way out here in really, the country. It's there's not a lot of people out there.
All right. Oh, that sounds beautiful. And we're going to watch this sunset, and we're going to sip these tequila gimlets. And what are we going to be talking about?
The thing that I think we should talk about at that restaurant would be scaling, right? And it's coming up more and more these days that I hear about marketers really trying to figure out how to scale their content teams. And, should they build it in-house? Should they choose an agency? And where should they choose to outsource? And it was interesting. One of the research findings that came back from our content management research at CMI was that number one, 84% of content marketing, or those businesses that are doing content marketing, are outsourcing content creation to some degree, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. Almost 9 out of 10 companies that do content marketing are outsourcing some form of their content creation. And I don't have any necessarily good template answers here, but I think one of the things that we've seen really help is when you're thinking about the content marketing approach, and this is too cute of a way to say it, but basically don't outsource the strategy, don't outsource the thinking,
right?
Which is build an institutional competency of strategic thought and approach and creativity, and really scale as you need to scale execution, I guess is the real point here. So I think would be an interesting conversation for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know a lot of freelance writers and those folks, but would you want that to keep that so that you've got that consistency of voice and you get across what you want to say, and it's better to have that group of people in-house?
Yeah, a lot of times the question I get is, if we're going to hire somebody, do we hire for subject matter expertise, or do we hire for marketing skills or some other thing, right? And my advice there is always hire for, the thinking and the strategic fit. The things that you can teach them. Subject matter expertise can be taught, or it can be found. What's not available is really good wisdom and strategic thinking. And so to me, it's always, when I'm looking for someone who can execute something, an idea that I've had or that idea that my team has had, that becomes doable. But when it comes to sort of coming up with really interesting ideas for our content and what we should be talking about in our thought leadership and our position or our story, I really want that to be us, right? Because one, it's the more interesting part of the job. You know what I mean? But two, it's also, it's also, in many ways, a more efficient way of operating.
And what do you think of the skill of writing? Because in that, isn't there? There's not everybody's a great writer. I've had people work for me that thought they were, and they really weren't, and they required some coaching. And I also think that a really good editor is really important. Would you have those? Are you saying we outsource those kind of skills?
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, look, I'm not saying that writing and editing and doing those things is any less valuable than the strategic part, right? So, strategy is one thing, execution is quite another, and execution can be, quite frankly, where most businesses fail. But in many cases, what I find is that what we do is the reverse, right? We have somebody come in and give us a great big, wonderful, creative thing to do, and then we go try and do it, and we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to, execute against it. And so I would include, execution is really so many things, from everything from project management to editorial direction to, writing to photography to video to audio to, design to, there's so much of that. But as we start building in-house capabilities, I think the real key is building in great and good fit for thinking in the business, and really scaling those content teams as the need for our production and or creative expression, I guess, is the best way to put it.
And I like your reference to doing a lot of the creative in-house, because I think we discussed it before. It really is the fun part, isn't it? And coming up with what the strategy is going to be along with that creative.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things. I often tell the cautionary tale, right? It's like walk around as a marketing director in your business with a printed out bunch of spreadsheets about the latest performance marketing and what you've been doing from a conversion basis and email conversion rates, and try and scare up a meeting together and to have people talk about it. And you'll be in a meeting by yourself, walk around with the latest comps of the new website or the latest comps of the new creative campaign, and everybody from the CEO down will want to have that meeting and have an opinion on it, right?
It's the truth. Yeah, that is totally the truth. Oh, well, that's great. Thank you very much. And a really good piece of advice. And you've painted a wonderful picture of watching the sunset while we chat about that. So that sounds fantastic. And Robert, if people want to learn more about what you just shared, where would they find you?
Oh, well, aren't you kind? Well, if you want to know more about what we're talking about these days, I think the best place to connect with us is our website, which, of course, is contentadvisory.net.
Well, splendid. And is this a topic you've written about already?
It is in varying degree. We don't have anything specifically on it, but I'm finding myself more and more answering this question of the in-house versus, agency or consultancy idea. It's something that I may end up writing a bigger piece on, but in varying degree. Yeah, there's stuff.
Yeah. Great. Well, I look forward to reading that. And thank you for joining me in the virtual Rockstar CMO bar.
Thanks for having me, as always.
Cheers. Thank you, Robert. As you might have guessed, I always look forward to chatting with Robert. I hope you enjoyed this part of the conversation when I actually remembered to press record. I would definitely encourage you to seek him out and his wonderful podcast. And good Lord, am I looking forward to going to one of those fabulous places he describes and drinking some of those fabulous drinks. All right, then, that's it. The end of episode 21 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. And thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. Thanks again to Robert, to Lauren for allowing me to convince her to take her podcasting debut, and to our wonderful Rockstar CMO contributing community for all that they do too. But most of all, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like my guests, please give them a mention, click their links and take a look at their work. I really appreciate their time. And if you have any feedback for me, you can find our little crew at Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. And of course, you can find the show notes at rockstarcmo.com/podcast. For regular listeners, you may have noticed that I mentioned chatting to Phil Lewis, founder and principal at Corporate Punk last week. We've postponed that conversation a couple of weeks as he has something exciting planned for us to discuss. Next week, I am chatting to Christine Bailey, CMO of Valitor, recently voted #1 woman in tech by B2B Marketing, which I think will be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to talking to her. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, founding editor of Rockstar CMO, and I hope you'll join us again next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.